Refinery Church. We're going to sing some songs if you'd like to stand up and join us.
Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. In excelsis Deo, shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? What the gladsome tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song? In excelsis Deo, in excelsis Deo. Come to Bethlehem and see Him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee Christ the Lord, the newborn King. In excelsis Deo, Gloria. In excelsis Deo, Gloria. In excelsis Deo, Gloria. In excelsis Deo. And hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Christ by highest heaven of righteousness, light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. Out he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness, light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. That the highest King would welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me into his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm the child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm the child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for
Father God, we just want to lift your spirit high this morning as we just sing these words of praise to you and just lift our voices together here, God. I just want to pray, just as we are in this Christmas season, God, that you just continue to provide peace for all of us. God, that you just continue to reach out to each and every one of us and cultivate that relationship, and God, that we would just be open and willing to that, and just to remember to spend time each day with you, just in prayer, just in time alone, that we can just be able to talk to you and just to be able to focus on a relationship with you, God, because it's so important. And Lord, I just pray this morning, just as we hear these words shared, that that you would just really speak into us, and just that you would share your word and your spirit with us this morning, God. It's just your name that I pray. Amen.
911 emergency services. What's your emergency?
Fire! Fire! There's a single bush in the desert, and it's a blazing inferno.
What's your location?
I'm in the far side of the wilderness. That's where I live, out near Horn.
Where are you in relation to the fire?
I'm a safe distance from it, but there's a guy super up close to it. He's down by the bush without his shoes on.
Where are his shoes?
Well, he took them off, didn't he? He just took them right off. I don't know why he's not wearing shoes.
Did he start the fire?
The fire is coming from inside the bush. It's on fire, but it's not burning up. Is that possible? Can plants spontaneously catch fire like that?
I don't think so.
It's strange and I don't like it. He's been talking to this bush for some time now, really arguing with it, going back and forth. Meanwhile, the thing's still on fire.
We can send someone to your location.
Whoa!
Sir.
He threw his staff down and it turned into a snake.
He did what?
It's a snake! Oh, he ran off. Wait, he's back. He's picking up the snake by its tail. He's gonna get bit. You're gonna get bit,
Sir,
mister!
don't approach.
Oh, wait, nope. It's a staff again. How's he doing this?
I don't know.
How are you doing this? I don't know. Fire update. It's still burning.
Sir, I need you to...
Oh, his hand has leprosy.
What?
He reached into his cloak and now his hand is white as snow. All disgusting and such.
Leprosy is very contagious.
Wait, he put it back in his cloak and now it's back to normal. How are you doing this?
Sir, we're sending someone to your location right now.
Okay, well, this guy is on a mission. He's turning around and looks like he's come to grips with his purpose and direction in life. That bush is still on fire, though. It's dwindling. I think I have an extinguisher. Should I go put it out?
No, don't go put it out.
Okay, I'm gonna go put it out.
Sir, I need you to... he hung up.
Well, good morning. I'm glad to see you here and online. I think I look that way for that. Most of you know I'm Mark, and I mostly do kids stuff and behind-the-scenes stuff, which I'm more than happy to do. But Scott and Tammy, they actually snuck down stateside to see Tammy's sister and brother-in-law and little baby. You know how all this COVID stuff has gone. The baby is like 6 years old now or something like that. No, 1 year old. So they'll be back for next week. Next Sunday's our Christmas service, so make sure you invite some friends for that. That's going to be great. And hopefully they're back for that, and you're not seeing me up here again, because you never know traveling these days, right? And then Christmas Eve, we're doing a 6 o'clock Christmas Eve service, so please plan on coming to that. And there's no service on Boxing Days. You can hit all the sales. You can line up early and do that, okay? So, well, quickly smile at someone close by you, or more just squint your eyes, because they can't really see you smiling anyways, right? So, glad you're here, and you might be wondering, Moses at Christmas. Well, I'm going to put together a little different combo today that I don't know if anybody's ever put together. We're going to talk about Moses and Mary, M&M, okay? But before we get to that, I have a question for you. Have you ever been visited by an angel? Some sort of overt kind of, right, heaven intervention type moment that changed your life, right? Not that cute girl in grade 12 English, right, that walked in and you went, oh, she's an angel, man. No, but like Christmas story angels, like shepherds, right? They're sitting there doing their thing, and then all of a sudden one, and then many. Or Mary's angel, and Joseph, or Zechariah. Anyone? I haven't. Maybe that's a good thing, I don't know. Now, sometimes we talk about guardian angels. Have you ever felt like you have had a guardian angel before? where you've gone through some situation and somebody or something happened and it was like, a person must have been my guardian angel. I was thinking about this, and it was like 1990 something, way back, and I was driving a Mercury Capri, which was like a Ford Mustang. You know, it looked pretty good, but it was the 4-cylinder model, so it was gutless, and it was the worst car I have ever owned in my life, I think. Anyways, my sister and I are driving back from Lumby, BC, where my parents were at, back to Calgary, where I was going to school, and it was a snowy day, a long day traveling, and we're getting closer and closer to Alberta, and of course it's getting colder and colder because a big cold front had moved in, and it was like minus 25, and we're just east of Canmore, and it's like wind is howling, not great driving conditions, and my wonderful Mercury Capri starts slowing down and losing power. And it's like, uh-oh, to the point where we were on the side of the highway just sitting there, the car's barely running, and we're kind of like, what are we going to do? Like, this is serious. We're going to have to flag someone down, and the cars are going by, and it's like, wow. And then all of a sudden this car pulls in behind us. And, it didn't have to stop. And this guy gets out, and we're trying to talk to each other outside in this cold, and I'm like, I think I need like a bottle of gas line antifreeze. And he's like, oh, I got one of those. And so he goes, gets it, and I'm like, how much do you want for it? Like, I would have given him all, I think I probably only had $9, right? I was a student. He's like, no, just have it. And so I put that in, and it doesn't just happen like instantaneously, as I found out, but slowly it started kicking in, cars, and I think he followed us for a while too, to make sure and then we got up to speed, cruised on our way the last 45 minutes into Calgary, and it was one of those, phew, like, he was my guardian angel, what a godsend. That was amazing. And you might have a similar story, but, what about God moments, like burning bushes or angel visiting Mary? And so I want to look at these two, even though they're extremely rare. Like, even in the Bible, if you look at it, there's very few incidences where angels kind of intervened and worked with people. So let's start with Moses. I'm going to do a very quick history of Moses here. Anybody listen to Team 1260 Sports Talk Radio in the morning, which is mostly not about sports, but about anything else? But sometimes they do this Connor McUpdate, which the guy talks really fast in. So I'm going to try to blow through most of Moses' history here so that we can get the major points, but not take too long. So you ready for this? Hopefully I can do this well. Okay? He was born into slavery in Egypt about 1,500 years before Jesus. The Israelites have been slaves for about 400 years and were the descendants of Jacob, who God would change his name to Israel, which we get the nation of Israel from. He had a highly dysfunctional family with 2 wives who were sisters. Now imagine that. And they had 12 sons, and not just from the 2 wives, but also from the 2 wives' maidservants. You think your family's messed up. That family was messed up. Jacob then played favorites. The jealous brothers sold one of those favorites into slavery into Egypt. And then years later, like a couple decades plus later, God used all of this to rescue Israel, or Jacob's entire family, during a severe famine by relocating them and reuniting them with Joseph. Time passes, right? Lots of time. They overstay their welcome, have tons of kids. The Egyptians get worried. They seize the opportunity, and to make all this bunch of free people, or bunch of people, get a bunch of free work out of them. So they oppress them and enslave them for hundreds of years. The Israelites are like a baby factory. And so Pharaoh orders all the new baby boys to be thrown into the Nile. Moses was born. Moses' mom tries to hide him. She can't hide him anymore because babies are noisy. And so she devises a long shot scheme of floating Moses. It's kind of like a Hail Mary to kind of tie the two together here. Right down the river, conveniently close to Pharaoh's daughter. She falls for it, or bites. She adopts Moses. He grows up in the royal family, but knows he's the son of slaves. Around 40, he's fed up. He loses it on a slave master, beating one of his fellow Israelites, murders the guy, flees for his life, ends up in Midian, marries, settles down, becomes a shepherd. At 80, he's watching sheep, sees a bush burning, but not really burning, and then God talks to him through it. And he says, I'm going to send you to rescue my people. Pretty amazing story, isn't it? Now, Moses gets all on board with this, right? Have you read this story before? Actually, he doesn't. He starts making excuses. I love it. Moses, he says, who am I that Pharaoh's going to listen to me? Like, that's a legit question. Pharaoh's powerful. He's shepherd, ex-convict kind of guy. What if my fellow Israelites question who sent me? What if they don't believe me? I'm not a good speaker. That was kind of the last one there. And through it all, God said, trust me, I've got this, right? And I love Moses' response, not because it's a good response after this, it's because I think I've used these exact same words before, right? Faced with an impossible task, one that if he failed, like his life would certainly have ended, right? But God was clearly a part of it. He gave Moses some abilities, like he gave him the staff would turn into a snake, right? The cool hand trick, you put it in your jacket, and you pull it out, and it's leprosy. Like if you did it one too many times and it stayed as leprosy, wouldn't that be a bit of a concern, right? And the third one was if he took water from the Nile and poured it on the ground, it would turn into blood. Like God was saying, I'm with you on this. But here's his final statement here. And this is in Exodus chapter 4, verse 13. You might want to underline this verse at some point or highlight it in your YouVersion Bible. He says, but Moses said, O Lord, please send someone else to do it. That's in the Bible. That's what he said, right? And I think sometimes I think of the Bible, I think, if it was all made up and the authors were writing it, they wouldn't put details that kind of make key players or people in it look bad, right? They would have only put the good stuff in there, right? We do that today. Have you ever made a resume? You don't put about what jobs you got fired on it, right? Like we gloss over those things, but not the Bible. And I love that, right? Here's Moses. He is probably the most influential person in the first half of the Bible, the Old Testament. He's a Bible hero, a legend, right? The man. And he says, please, God, just send somebody else to do it. Now, thankfully, though, he did do it. And if you think about it, anybody watch the Ten Commandments movie at Easter or whatever? Well, if he hadn't, it would have only been about an hour long instead of 14 hours long, however long it is. So, okay, let's hard shift to Mary here. So now we go 2020-ish years ago, and Mary was a young woman living in northern Israel. It was a different time, different culture. Mary was engaged to Joseph, which is a little different than marriage stuff we have in our day, from what I understand. When you were betrothed to someone, quite often you were young, and it doesn't mean you were married yet, but you were on the tracks. That was set. Like it was like you were married, but you weren't married yet. And so, right, you got Mary, and in that culture, quite often that was a teenage girl. That's why they think that Mary was young when all of this happened. Okay? Now, some Christian traditions, they try to deify Mary, right? Mary, the mother of God. And I don't know, read it for yourself. There's very little information about Mary in the Bible. If you read early in Luke and in Matthew, the Christmas story there, I think that she was just simply a teenage girl with a heart for God that God chose to work through. She was human. She had flaws. She had hopes. She had dreams. She probably had a picture of what she wanted her life to be, whatever that may have been, right? Raise a family, help her neighbor, whatever that would have been. And then out of the blue, if you want to look it up, it's in Luke chapter 1, verses 29 to 31. I'm going to read it here. This is what happened to her. It says, in the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, that was her relative. You have to read a little bit ahead of that to find out what that was about. God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, greetings, you who are highly favored, the Lord is with you. Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. Anytime anybody in the Bible came in, like an angel came to him, it must be a terrifying experience because they're all like freaked out by it. Okay? I lost my spot. Mary was greatly troubled. But the angel told her, do not be afraid, Mary, you have found favor with God. Now let's pause there for a second, pretend we don't know the rest of the story. If someone comes to you and says, and they're important, and they say that you're highly favored, you're expecting probably something very good to come afterwards. Now, I'm not equating Elon Musk with God here, okay? Let's hit that right, okay? He might be like the wealthiest man in the world for the moment, but let's say Elon Musk's executive assistant, she came to you and she said, "Hey, greetings, Mark. Elon finds you highly in favor, like he's highly impressed with you." And I'd be like, "Well, that's kind of cool." And then I'd start thinking, what is Elon going to do next? Is he going to give me a Tesla because he's so impressed with me? Or maybe a flight on whatever his space thing is? Hopefully not a one-way ticket to Mars. Right? We'd expect something good after that. And so the angel says to her that she's highly favored. And then in verse 31, he says, "You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will call him Jesus." Now again, don't pretend you don't know the rest of the story. Like, can we try to imagine this as a young teenage girl? You're going to have a baby. It's not Joseph's baby. It's God's baby. Probably a little scary. As it sunk in, probably like, how's this going to work? Right? Pregnant teenager, unwed mother-to-be, fear, uncertainty, drastic change of course of maybe what she was thinking, right? Kids, youth have hopes and dreams. Suddenly it changed. And then what would Joseph think, right? She might have been having one of those, my parents are going to kill me moment, right? Like, how do you tell your parents this? Have you ever thought about that? Hey, so like an angel came to me and Mom, Dad, you'll never believe this. I'm going to have a baby. They might kill you at that point, right? And what was her response? And what her response was? She said, "Oh Lord, please send someone else to do it." No, she didn't say that. That was supposed to be funny. Okay? This is her response, right? Young Mary. "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May it be as you have said." In modern language, it might have been, "Okay, yeah, sure," right? Happy face emoji or something like that, if she texted it. I'm in. So let's compare the two sort of burning bush experiences here, right? Both were asked to do something and be a part of something that was out of their comfort zone, that was against conventional wisdom, that they didn't know all the details to, that was doomed to fail unless God intervened, and that was a step of faith. But they're also different, right? Moses was old, or if you're 80-ish, he was mature, right? Mature. Okay? He'd been around the block. He had a past, not too much future, not a lot of runway left potentially. This wasn't young Moses with that sort of new car smell. He'd enjoyed the spoils of royalty, and for the last 40 years, he attended to sheep. Now, all families sort of sit around and tell stories about their past, right? Our kids roll their eyes and all that stuff, but right, I bet Moses didn't tell a lot of Egypt stories. I bet his kids weren't like bugging him. Hey, Dad, tell us again about how you lived in extravagance and opulence, on the backs of all your brothers and sisters and all your relatives and all that stuff, right? They probably weren't asking about that. Or tell us how you finally got fed up with all that oppression and you snapped and you murdered that guy, right? The so-called best years of Moses were behind him. Probably the youthful fire was gone. Hope for making his mark on the world probably set sail 40 years earlier. Now, there's nothing wrong with shepherding, and I got to say that because I'm related to sheep people, because if one of them watches, I might get grief over this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being sheep ranchers or sheep farmers or shepherds, right? But it's never really the dream destination, I think, of princes, that you grow up, like you go from prince to shepherd. Right? I don't think Moses would have wrote a memoir called Moses, right? Prince to Shepherd, not necessarily a bestseller. Probably, though, he was probably in a comfortable spot, right? He's not a slave, had a wife, had a family, had a job, making ends meet. He knew what was ahead, though, when it comes to Egypt, right? He wasn't naive. He'd seen it. He knew what kind of power Egypt had firsthand. And he understood how crazy the request was. But Mary was young, and she was immature. And if you're like 15, don't take offense to that. Someday you'll be like 40, and you'll look back and go, okay, I wasn't overly mature then. But she was. She would have been. right? She had very little life experience, hardly seen the world. She was naive. She had no idea what she was going to get herself into. And imagine the heartbreak. Obviously, Joseph didn't just buy into it immediately. He was going to divorce her quietly. He was a decent guy, but he wasn't buying the angel story, right? How difficult would that have been for her? She had no idea that her and Joseph would travel 5 long days on a donkey while pregnant to Bethlehem, and then potentially stay there for probably a couple years. If you look at the wise men and the things, they didn't show up at the stable. Okay? They came later. They seen the star about 2 years earlier. So they may have lived in Bethlehem for about 2 years. And then after that, they went to Egypt. And there was no FaceTime. She couldn't call her mom or anything like that. Distant. Would have been hard. And then bigger yet, obviously 30-some years later, she would have watched this child die on a cross. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, and yet her response was, "I'm the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said." Or, "I'm in. Yes, sure." So neat, Mark. So what? Chances are you and I don't know, I can't predict the future. God does this thing. I don't think we're going to have probably a burning bush experience. If you do, I want to hear about it, right? Angel show up. If an angel showed up to Heather and I and said, "You're going to have another baby," I would say, "Please send someone else to do that." Okay? But that's probably not what's needed now. Moses had his path. Mary had her path. But I do believe that God still wants to do similar things in our lives. I believe he nudges us through his Holy Spirit to be Jesus' hands and feet to the people around us. Right? He's given us different circumstances, abilities, passions, to be a light. To be a light. He wants us to pray dangerous prayers like, "God, please use me." Right? God directs me something or corrects something that my way that kind of freaks me out, that I don't know how it's going to end up. And then start looking and start asking, right? A couple years ago, we started the Generosity Project, which is kind of become a cool thing in our church. I'm really excited about, really proud of our church for it. And it all was born out of, we were going to teach the kids about generosity in Kids Zone. And if you want to teach kids how to do something, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to do it. And so just came up with the idea of, let's get parents and kids involved to give some of their money, including the kids, right? If it's like $2, that's great, to practice some generosity. But then it was like, who are we going to show generosity to? And so, I thought about it, got an idea there from something that happened years ago. And so I contacted the school. Sorry, I just kind of lost my spot. Okay, one moment. Okay. Oh, rats. I'm going the wrong way. No, I'm not. Okay, there we are. Okay, no, I'm back. Whew. Scott, please come back. So I contacted Velma Baker School. I have a contact there. Didn't know how it was worked out. A little nervous about it, always a little nervous about it. Didn't know if it would just get flat out rejected. And it didn't. They're like, "Yeah, there's a family here." I'm like, "Well, that's great." And they're like, "How much can you do?" I'm like, "I have no idea. Could be $50. Could be $500. Well, after that first year, right, people gave $1,900 to it. And we ended up helping 2 families. And so then last year we decided, well, let's do it again. But the problem was they were in a pandemic. And, right, we weren't meeting on Sunday mornings last year at this time. Everybody was online. How would people get the money here? Didn't matter. People overcame that. $3,100 was given. We helped 3 families that were desperately in need of some help. And then this year, we're sitting around and it's like, I don't know, what can we do? And we've already reached out to some schools about how can we help them. Right? And one came back needing mittens, and you guys gave 150 pairs of mittens plus, that there's more there now, that went to one school. Velma Baker has 3 families that really need some help this year. One family, as I found a little bit, we only get limited information because of privacy stuff, and that's fine. It's a single mom who has a daughter and 2 nephews, that are living with her. Their mother passed away this last year. This is their first Christmas without their mom. And we're going to help them out. We're going to help that Christmas be awesome. Like, this is great. Like, that's the thing, is it's about stepping out there. It's trying to look and see what we can do. And for each of us, that might be different. Now, update on this, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm almost certain that we are over $8,000 to the Generosity Project. $8,000 that are gonna, isn't that awesome? So well done. So what freaks you out and fires you up? Maybe it's a neighbor who is lonely and needs some community. Or maybe a co-worker of yours is in a rough spot, or a single mom that could use a hand. Maybe you can build or sew or teach or care or advise or provide, encourage, right? Someone who is in your sphere. Better yet, maybe you can do that with some other people. Team up, and that's called the church. So here's so what number 2. What if you're young, right? What if you're inexperienced, naive, and have few resources, like I'm 12 or I'm 15 or I'm a student, I'm swamped? Well, pray about it. God, freak me out about what fires you up, something that fires you up, and then be like Mary, right? Just say, okay, I'm in. I don't know how this is going to work out. And when the opportunity comes up to care or to give or to serve or point people to Jesus at school or work or on your sports team or drama troupe, you'll likely find yourself saying, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm in. God, I'm going to just do it. That's what faith is. It's attempting something for God and with God and not knowing how it's going to work out. Right? If I can plan it out and I can resource it, then that's not a step of faith. That's a step of Mark, or insert your name. So if you're young, don't say, Lord, please send someone older. He's sending you. He's sending you into something that will freak you out, but will fire you up. And a side note on this, I just think about this. You know what? If your prayer life's a little flat, all of us go through ups and downs with our spiritual lives. You know what? Start asking God to freak you out and fire you up and do something. And your prayer life will come alive when you're in over your head and don't know how it's going to work out unless God shows up. Right? Your church experience will go through the charts. Because, right, you're coming to worship because you're seeing God work in your life and around you. So you're not too young. Here's the second thing. So what? You're not too old. Here's a deep biblical principle I think I discovered in here. I've never heard anybody say this. Okay? Moses was 80 when he led the Israelites until he was 120 years old. Okay, you ready for the deep biblical principle? Therefore, if you are under 120, God still expects you to take steps of faith. If you're 121, I don't know. You're off, I guess. I don't know. You can retire from your job, but you never retire from trusting God, serving Him, and taking steps where you don't know how it's going to work out. Right? You know this. Your purpose isn't your job. Right? Because otherwise, if you retired, then you would have no purpose anymore. Okay? And your purpose is or was not your job or career because, nope, already said that one. Your purpose in life is not to save enough money so that you can retire and do nothing. Now, I'm all for savings. I do the money makeover stuff, teach people that about being responsible. You should save for your retirement and all that stuff. But retirement isn't an excuse to sit on the sidelines to say, I did my part. I'm going to let the younger generation carry the load now. If you're breathing, God's not done with you. And He's not done working through you. So your purpose is first and foremost serving God in your 10s, your 20s, your 40s, your 60s. Right? And it may look different at different ages. Absolutely. Retirement may afford you more time to do less, or more time and less to do. Again, look around. Ask God to put something or someone in your path that kind of, something that freaks you out a little bit, out of your comfort zone. Maybe it's as simple as adopting that next door family of yours and kind of becoming extra grandparents in the scene there. Maybe you get home care workers coming into your home. You know what? It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to show them God's love, grace, and point them and get to know them and see what's happening in their families. What struggles what can you pray for them about? One last note on this. The steps of faith in the past are in the past. You don't fill up your scorecard until you're done. It's not like Yahtzee, right? Yeah, I got some twos and some whatever, right? When we helped start this church, Heather and I, we were young then. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. We were freaked out a lot. There's some stories from how's this going to work? And the value of those isn't somehow to say to God, okay, we did our part, we're sitting out the next season of life. It's not it at all. The value in those is that they remind us how God worked and provided. He provided in our 20s. So guess what? He's going to provide in our 50s, in our 30s. He's going to provide in our 70s or 80s if we're blessed with that many years. You're not too old. Okay, last, so what? But Mark, I've got a past. I've blown it. I'm disqualified. You don't know what I've done. I've lied. I've cheated on my taxes. I got divorced. I got a DUI. I didn't wait till marriage to have sex. I had a baby outside of marriage. Whatever that is for you and I, right? Think of this. Okay, I got another question for you. Don't put your hand up on this one, though. It might be a little awkward. Have you ever murdered anyone? There's only 2 hands up. That's pretty good for those online there, right? Whew. We'll pray for them. Of all the terrible things you can do to anyone, isn't that kind of the top one? And yet, God used Moses. Murderer Moses. So if he can use him, he can use you. He can use me. Now, it's not a license to do bad things because God will still use me. We know that, right? But God can use those, and sometimes he uses our past and our mistakes in powerful ways. So we better wrap this up. I cut a quote out of a church bulletin program, whatever you want to call it, about 30, I think it was 1990-ish, 91. Everything in this message is back to the 90s, I guess, right? It struck me, and it's been on my bulletin board or in a desk drawer or something ever since. And it's from Helen Keller. And many of you probably know a little bit about Helen Keller. She was born in 1880. Just an incredible story. She lost both her sight and hearing at 19 months old due to an illness. And so she lived the majority of her life. I think she lived till 86. Majority of her life in darkness and without hearing anybody. And yet she overcame that. She graduated from college. She wrote books. Just an amazing story. But she wrote this. She said, I long to accomplish a great and noble task, but it is my chief duty to accomplish humble tasks as though they were great and noble. The world is moved along not only by the mighty shoves of its heroes, but also by the aggregate of the tiny pushes of each honest worker. Wow. I think and probably you, probably fall more into the tiny pushers and honest workers category, right? We're not Moses, not Mary. I think of some contemporaries, right? You think of Billy Graham, Mother Teresa, Charles Stanley or Andy Stanley. These people seem to be like million candlelight spotlights that God is using. But nonetheless, right, we're kind of like this candle. We're important. Very important. And the candle only fulfills its purpose if it's burning and being used up. And likewise, when we give up our lives, our resources, we say to God, yeah, I'm in. I'm in. And when we do that, we shine a light. We provide hope and grace and love to those in our close vicinity. And God works through us if we're young and naive or old and a little worn out. And ultimately, in spite of our shortcomings, and often most powerfully through them. And the aggregate of each person giving their life, saying, yeah, I'm in, God, is that we are a church. And God works through us. It's amazing. And I don't know about you, I feel like our world's getting a little darker. Anybody on board with me? You can raise your hand with that one. Okay, I got 2 on those too, okay? No, it does. Maybe we're just watching too much news or something anymore. People are further from God, spiritually drifting, morally bankrupt. Seems to be more hate, less love. More hurt, less hope. More brokenness, less health, especially in families. More selfishness, less service and selflessness. But the darker it gets, And I meant to bug Elise back there. Maybe she can do this. Can you fade the lights on the stage a little bit for me, Elise, if that's easy enough to do? But the darker it gets, right, the more noticeable the candle gets. And the more God can, I think, use you and I in the community and the people around us. So let's wrap it up. Let's pray. God, as we leave here, help us to remember we're your ambassadors. You have us where you want us to be, in schools, in jobs, in families, in communities, maybe on a sport team, all the people we rub shoulders with. Those are the people you want us to be lights to. God, help us to be lights of hope and love and grace today, at lunch, this week, at work. So get together over Christmas with family. God, nudge us to things that freak us out, but fire us up. And when we're faced with those, God, give us the courage to say, I'm going to be your servant. I'm in. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, thanks for putting up with me. Have a great week. And remember, I don't think I mentioned this, but this is the last day to give to the Generosity Project if you're going to give. So you can give outside there or you can give online. Go to the website if you need more information. So have a great week. Oh, got a comment.